Are we ready?
I'm ready,
Yeah,
mate.
good. You were born ready, weren't you?
Of course.
You have some badges on your. Would you call it a lapel on a t-shirt?
No, it just says my shoulders. Isn't it?
Yeah. So, Josh, how long have we been doing this podcast?
3 years. It's over 3 years.
And probably for about 2.75 of those years, we've been talking about having co-hosts on, right?
Yeah.
And now we do it 2 weeks, 2 sessions in a row.
2 sessions in a row.
Delighted to have our good friend Ed Jenneson join us. I lost my teeth there for a second. Ed, welcome, mate.
Thank you very much, Hass. Great to be here.
Yeah.
Why should we? Are we starting by? Why don't you tell us who you are?
Who's hosting today? Sorry, who's hosting?
Sorry, mate.
Yeah.
Is it me?
Sorry.
Ed, why don't you tell us who you are?
Let me let Hass ask you who you are.
Who am I? Okay. Well, I am a lawyer. I am 43 years old. I've got a family who I care deeply about, and I am sober. I am a little bit spiritual. I've got a very good friend and coach who is Mr. Josh Connolly sitting next to us today.
Yeah.
Or you.
That's enough, mate. Yeah. What else?
And, yeah, I mean, I could talk all day about myself. It's my favourite subject, actually.
Oh, brilliant. Well, there'll be lots of opportunity today. Just for our listeners, I think one of the things that Josh and I talked about, you know, way back when we were thinking about doing this is that we wanted co-hosts rather than guests, right? So you're joining us today as just one of us. We're going to have a chat, and much like, you know, the Social Matters crew, it's really just diving into us a little bit and then, you know, diving into some topics that we want to talk about. And I think we've got some good stuff today.
Yeah. Difficult conversations. That's what we're all about.
But as usual, we always start with a check-in. So Josh, I'm going to go over to you.
Mate, I was thinking about my check-in on the way in, yeah. I'm tired today. I feel very tired because I've had like this amazing, like if I go back the last 7 days, I'll say this as quickly as I can. We took the kids to Disneyland this weekend, yeah. And it was like the most amazing weekend probably of my life. I took all 6 kids, me and my wife. And there was once upon a time when that was only ever a pipe dream. I used to think about how amazing it would be to take the kids. Never thought, and it was just like something I'll never ever do. And I had a bit of a moment on the Saturday night when we was watching the fireworks around the castles where it's like, fucking this is it. You know, you're always chasing, feeling like you want to get somewhere, but like that is it. I'm there in those moments. I'm there. So that was like an amazing weekend, but of course it was very sort of tiring as well. And then I'm straight back in the deep end since Tuesday. But then I think you'll both understand this, but I know Ed will really understand this. My daughter, who's nearly 17, she went to a concert last night in Bristol and needed a lift home. And it's about a 50-minute drive from where I am. And so I drove and picked her up at like 11:15 at night, ended up getting home at midnight. And I'm sat in the car outside Bristol. And I had another like real moment where I'm like, I'm a dad that my daughter can rely on. Like her and her mate went to this concert and she knew. And I was able to pull up there and I said, I'm out the front, wait till it finishes and then come out and you'll find me here. And like I was nearly crying, sat in the car, just thinking, my kids have got a dad that they can rely on. They got a dad that they know that they can ring and I'll be there. And as tired as I knew it was going to make me and as much as I was thinking I could really do without this, the other big part of me was driving there thinking, this is the fucking dream for me. Do you know what I mean? So I feel tired, but very, very good.
Grateful.
Very grateful, man.
Yeah.
Very good. And it's my sobriety birthday is on Sunday, yeah. So.
Oh God!
Oh
my God!
Yeah. So I get near 11 years. I'll be on Sunday. So I do become more reflective in general in this sort of period of time. But yeah, man, it keeps getting better.
But you didn't reflect on what you'd look like with that snapback on today, did you? You didn't reflect in the mirror. And
So I bought this hat at the airport on the way to Paris, yeah, and obviously my kids were taking a piss out of me when I put it on. Leah said it looks really good, you know, it's nice. And then my daughters just kept doing these videos of me, and then I'd look over and they'd go, "Oh." So mate, yeah, I'm feeling very good anyway. I'm very, very, very grateful about that.
Yeah, brilliant. Ed.
Yeah, I thought about this, Hass, and I thought the best word to describe how I'm feeling, actually, is buzzed. Now, what do I mean by that? I mean that I am literally like riding the crest of a wave in terms of my life at the moment. Everything is going brilliantly from a work perspective. I've just had 6 months at my new firm, and my new firm is it's a really, really brilliant place to work and be part of, and we'll get into that a bit later on, I'm sure. The connections that I've got in my life are as deep as they've ever been. I've got some fantastic relationships with people, whereas before I used to spread myself very, very thinly across lots and lots and lots of different people. I don't do that anymore. I understand what's important to me. There's a small number of people that are important to me, and I get I get a lot from that, real value from that. Last weekend, celebrated my mum and dad's 50th wedding anniversary. We went away for the weekend, and it was great. And again, being there, I've not had a drink now for over 4 years. I was the one that was doing all the driving, or at least half of the driving, because there was the need for 2 cars. And it's little things like that, little moments like that. When I stopped drinking 4 years ago, it was actually about 5 years ago that I first stopped. I thought that's it now. I thought I'll exist. I'll be pretty cheesed off most of the time, and if I lose a bit of weight because of it, then great. But I never ever thought that my life would get even a bit better, let alone go from Division 1 to the Premier League. That's how it feels at the moment.
Wow.
And a lot of that is, looking at it sort of holistically. So, it's family, it's family and it's work and it's friendships, really. It's those three things, and they're all going, for me, at this moment in time, brilliantly. It's Friday. Stayed over in a nice hotel last night. I'm working effectively for part of my own business, and I'm here with you guys. So, I'm buzzed.
Amazing. Buzzed. Brilliant.
I
I'm
love
buzzed
that
too.
championship
Yeah,
to
man.
Premier League.
Yeah. You wouldn't know about that, would you?
No, I said Div 1 to Premier League.
yes, I fucking would know about
so
it.
I bypassed the championship.
I would know about it, by the way. We were in the first fucking season of the Premier League, Swindon.
That was
I'll have you know.
it was a good
We were
moment.
known as the worst team in the Premier League for years.
Oh. But not anymore.
No, yeah.
That's good.
Just like you wouldn't know about the Champions League anymore, would you?
It's not over yet, mate.
right.
It's not over yet.
All right, mate. Yeah. Thursday nights, Channel 5 for you next season, mate.
I'll be turning the TV off. Buzzed. I love that. Do you know, I was thinking about this myself, and I would say that similarly, I'm feeling really good about life for me at the moment. It's busy, as I always say it is. I feel like a broken record sometimes the way I talk about it on here, but for me, I'm very proud of like what I've been doing around my own personal development, and it's paying dividends. I feel better. I think I'm more present at home. I've got more clarity at work. I think the energy that is probably the yin to that yang is a couple of friends are going through some real personal things at the moment, and I'm really feeling it. So my compassion for them is actually pulling my energy a little bit, and I'm really conscious of what they're going through, and I just want to make sure that I'm there for them. They know I'm there for them, but also a big part of my personality type, I think, is that I want to solve stuff for people. I want to fix stuff, and when I can't do that, it really gets to me. So that's what I'm playing with at the moment today. And then on top of that, we'll get into this because I think it will become clear later. But when I feel like I've got a responsibility, like today I'm hosting, so I feel like I'm responsible for making sure this is a good session, I get a bit anxious.
Yeah.
So I didn't sleep brilliantly yesterday, and then it was an early drive in because of the train strike. So there's just a little bit of tiredness, jadedness as well. But overall, super happy and delighted that the three of us are here on a Friday.
Do you know what, though? It's quite big that you say that you get anxious, man, because I've known you, I don't know how many years now, but I would never have said that about you at the beginning. If somebody said, does he get anxious? I'd be like, no, Hassan, one of them who just don't get anxious. But I feel like you've sort of and I might be wrong here, but like over like the last couple of years, I feel like you've opened up to that a little bit more.
Yeah.
And not that you were hiding it previously, but more that it was probably buried and protected in a few different ways. Do you know what I mean? And you showed up to life a bit differently, but you sort of...
I was less aware of it, definitely.
Yeah.
But let's leave that because I think that's going to be
come up
important later.
Yeah, man. Yeah.
What we're going to go next is a segment I like to call Complete the Sentence.
Good,
Well,
good, well thought out title.
thank you, man. I know you like well thought out titles. We should do it more often for yourself, for your segments. So complete the sentence. So basically, I will share for the listeners that I have shared with Ed and Josh some sentence starters, and each of us has to complete the sentence. So I'm going to start with you, Josh.
All right. Let's do this. I've not overthought these purposely.
Yeah. Okay.
All right.
I cringe every time I think about.
This one is maybe a little bit of a boring answer, but it's true. I cringe when I think about the content that I was making maybe 2 or 3 years ago. Like, it really makes me cringe.
I saw one of them recently, actually, I have to say. I
you?
cringed watching
Did you?
it.
What one was it? What one was it?
I
Can you
can't,
remember?
it was, you had that funny background that you used to put behind you.
So I bought this thing off eBay.
Yeah.
£10, and it
Looked
was
like a tie-dye sort of-
colourful bricks in the
Yeah.
background. Yeah, and I
Yeah.
used to stand in front
And
of
you were sort of like, I can't remember, but you're like, this is going to change your life. I am Josh Connolly.
And like, there's obviously the content's all there. You can find it if you look hard. It comes up.
No one's got that time, Josh.
No, but some people. So like, somebody said to me the other day, I decided to go right back to the first ever YouTube video you did and start working through them. And I was like, fuck, man. And then I thought about it and I thought, oh my God. Because do you remember I used to do Freedom Friday? And then there was a picture of me going like that. And then I used to do this like thing that I'd found on iMovie to, oh my God. But the flip side of that is it was all part of getting to where I am now.
Oh, come on.
And it shows progression, man.
But you cringe.
Yeah, I think if you don't cringe at what you were saying a year ago, you ain't working hard enough on yourself.
Oh, look at that. Bosh.
It's deep, man.
Ed.
Well, I did have one, but I've got two now.
Okay.
It's just following off from what Josh just said. About 20 years ago, so I was about 1 year qualified as a lawyer. We had a really difficult case up in Thornaby near Middlesbrough. And the judge said, at the end of the day, he said, right, we're going to have to go into a second day. Can't be tomorrow, it never is the day after. What are the dates of unavailability? So everyone gave the dates of unavailability. And he said, right, okay, so I'm going to list it for the 28th of February. And I went, oh, that's my birthday. And the judge looked at me as if to say, you absolute cretin. Why have you just told me that? And then just no one else reacted in the room.
Tumbleweed.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh,
Yeah.
man.
But I mean, you know, similar what I was doing 20 years ago. It makes me cringe in terms of a work perspective. But what I was going to say actually was, and it's quite apt having this microphone here, was the number of times, and believe me, there's a lot of times where I grabbed the microphone at a wedding and sang Robbie Williams' Angels, and sometimes
Go ahead now, Ed.
Yeah, come on.
No,
You have a
I
mic.
can't.
Gosh, there's a mic.
I can't. Maybe at the end.
Maybe at the
there
end.
There was. I see it and wait. There was.
There's an angel.
There's a. There was one occasion where there wasn't actually a band; it was just a guy with a guitar that was singing, and I just went and got the microphone, just a bit of a cappella. Is that what it's called?
A cappella, yeah.
Yeah, and I was shit as well. You know, I'm not a good singer. I think I am at the time.
We all do.
So yeah, that makes me cringe a little bit.
Oh man! Well, we are going to have Angels at some point. I will maybe not make you do it today.
All
but
three of us will do it at the
This
end.
video
I
is
don't know the
knocking
words,
around.
but I can make.
Oh, fuck off, you don't know
I know
the
the
words.
chorus, maybe. We'll see.
Honest?
I know bits of it, but you.
Word for word, mate. I know it word for word.
I love a bit of Robbie.
Okay, so I cringe every time I think about Louise, the designer, who was a bit older than me. Let me just tell you a bit more. You're looking.
I'm excited for this one.
This was a long time ago. She was a designer and older than me, very attractive. I thought, wow, I'm definitely punching above my weight. And we started dating, maybe 2 or 3 dates, and it was going really well. And I was like, oh, wow, this is like amazing. Like, I've met this very attractive woman who's older than me, like I'm winning at life. So we're dating a little bit. And then she had a birthday coming up. We only went on about 2 or 3 dates, right? So we weren't boyfriend or girlfriend or anything like that, but she had a birthday. So I was like, okay, this is going well. I was probably about, I don't know, 20 maybe.
All right, how old's she? Or is that coming in the story?
She was about 25, 26.
Oh,
so
okay.
a bit older, yeah.
Yeah.
And so she had a birthday. So she was like a designer, and she made like children's books. So she actually used to do like the prototypes. So she would do like sewing and stuff like that. She said, oh, she always used to get like needles would prick her finger. So I was like, okay, listen to that. We both shared a memory of watching something as kids. So it was called Monkey Magic, and it was like this sort of TV show. And so I thought, okay, I want to show I'm a good listener. And I'm a good listener, and that's why I'm a coach, right? But her birthday came up, and I bought her a thimble. I'm cringing now. I bought her a thimble, and I bought her a DVD of that show we used to watch, Monkey. Hang on. It's not over.
That's not it.
I made her a compilation.
Of what?
Just sort of romantic.
Your last
songs.
3 dates?
Yeah. No,
What, on like a burned
music
CD?
compilation. Yeah.
Like a burned CD, yeah.
But I burnt a CD. Yeah, I burnt a CD. And then I thought, oh, they were a bit cheap, so I bought her some perfume as well. So 4 gifts, 3 dates. She started to ghost me after that.
Did she ghost you proper after?
Friend zoned. Yeah. Cringe just thinking about it. Friend zoned. Yeah. But you know what? A bit like you, Josh. If that hadn't have happened, I would never have met, the love of my life today. Yeah.
Now, man. That's very good, mate. That's very good.
Yeah. Okay.
Cool, that's made me cry a bit. I hope she listens.
I hope she doesn't, man.
What's her name?
Louise. Yeah,
Yeah,
what's her
surname?
surname?
No.
In exchange for Robbie? I'll do a bit of Robbie. If you
No. Never going to happen. Okay, so if I had a time machine, this is coming to you, Ed. If I had a time machine, I
would go back to a time in life where we didn't have tech. And the reason I say that is because I was listening to a podcast, and it was people who were a lot younger than us. I can't remember which one it was now, but they were a lot younger than us. And they said that they had watched the film American Pie. Do you remember it? Have you seen it?
Yeah.
And they said, what an amazing time that must have been to be alive, like late 90s. They were like, nobody had phones. It looked like such fun. I thought, well, life wasn't quite like American Pie, but it wasn't far off at times. I mean, maybe it still is now for young people. And I thought to myself,
do you enjoy apple pie?
Yeah.
Yeah, was you bang on the warm apple pie back then, was you, Ed?
Can we cut that bit out? So I think I'd probably go back and appreciate what life was like without it. Now, I'm not one of these people that thinks we should get rid of it, because I think it's absolutely, in the main, brilliant. It lets us do things like this. I would never have met Josh. I wouldn't be here today without technology. But I do think that it sucks the joy out of life at times, and it sucks the presence out of life. And if we could go back to that, and everyone could see what it was like, maybe we would change our habits a bit. The philosophy of that guy, that Mo, is it Mo Gaudat?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
He thinks that, if you get to a place of total happiness, then you would never change anything in the past. He even talks about losing his son, doesn't he? And how that happened for a reason, and he's now at peace with that. So whether it would be sensible to try and go back and do things differently, I'm not sure. But yeah, I'd probably go to a life that didn't involve tech.
I can really resonate with that, because, we're all parents, we're all dads here sitting here today, and you sort of see how technology it's just what our kids know, right? They've grown up with it. We didn't grow up with it, and then we've adopted it into our lives, right? So it's probably a bit easier for us to go, I remember what it was like before that. Well, for a lot of our kids, it's just part of the day-to-day life. And at the weekend, we played Monopoly, and it was like just seeing them interact and try and be entrepreneurial and try and I lost, by the way. I got obliterated by my kids. And
I wouldn't let that happen.
Well, what? You wouldn't let them obliterate me?
No, wouldn't let them
Thank
fucking
you,
beat
Josh.
me.
Yeah.
We ain't playing them, boys.
Listen, I had to let them win. I had to let them win. But yeah, I'm totally with you. Yeah. But mine is not so noble. If I had a time machine,
it'd go back to Louise.
not by those presents.
Yeah. I wouldn't make the CD. If I had a time machine, I'd put the £100 I was going to put on Liverpool beating Barcelona 4-0 in 2019. It was 100 to 1. Instead, I put it on 5-1. So I lost out on 10 grand, basically.
What? Sorry, what was the score? 4-0.
Yeah.
And you put it on 5-1.
Yeah. So
You put
basically,
£100 on it.
so it was. So for those that aren't into football, which I imagine there are lots of people, we had lost 3-0 at Barcelona. It was the second leg. They were coming to Anfield. It was highly unlikely that we were going to win that
I
game.
remember it well, man. Yeah.
And I had 100 quid left in Paddy Power in my account, so I thought I'm going to go for it. And so I hovered over 4-0, thinking, oh no, there's definitely no way Barcelona aren't scoring at Anfield. So I went for 5-1, and I lost 100. If I'd put it on 4-0,
Yeah.
100 to 1 on 100
Where would
quid.
you be now with that?
Not here, not with you
£10?
guys. Yeah.
I sort of don't want to argue. I think Ed's come up with the best one. I've been thinking. I follow Nicky Blackmarket on Instagram.
Yeah.
And he's still out there DJing, right? And he was doing like a rave on a boat recently. Yeah. It fucking like, and he kept doing these, like, he was doing a live of him DJing, and everyone there just had their phone out. And if you look at like videos on when I used to go to Brunel Rooms and that, and it was Sidewinder and Valve Sound. Like, we didn't have phones then. You had them, but there was no reason to have it out because it was like
Just play
Nokia
Snake.
3210s and that. Yeah. So you had a horn and you were just in the music, man. Yeah. So like, I love that one. I mean, look, the one that I'd give, and I'm not going to bother talking about it because it'd be a bit of a waste of time, but I'd love to go back to when Paolo Di Canio was at Swindon and relive that again.
Okay, let's move on from that. All right, I'm going to do one more, but we'll do this quickly. If I could fix one thing about the world, it would be.
Do you want me to go? Mine's a bit serious, and it's one that I would always say. If I could fix one thing about the world, I would open up everybody's eyes to the need to invest properly in children and young people. I think the root of all problems in our society, or most problems in our society, from mental health to, well, all mental health really, well-being, the way that we approach the world, is because I think we have completely lost the importance of those formative years in the family, supporting the children and the families, all of that stuff. We've got so lost in thinking that the goal is to become so super successful and we have to get both parents back to work as quickly as we can. I just think we've forgotten the importance of that.
Yeah.
So that's like, in a nutshell, that is what I would change.
Mine's very close. Ed?
Yeah, mine's a bit serious actually for this one. I struggled an awful lot with the medical system, and the biggest issue for me was this separation between body and mind. So, you know, I went to the doctors many times, and there's a whole podcast to talk about this. So I won't go into too much detail now, but between the ages of like 19 through to about 37, I went to the doctors and I was told all of these, given all these different diagnoses of anxiety and depression and all these other different things. And then they looked at these physical symptoms that I was suffering from, and because all the anxiety medication and antidepressant medication wasn't working. So they looked at the physical symptoms and focused just on the physical symptoms, as I suppose I did as well, which was like, you know, light sensitivity, head pressures, feeling very dizzy and sick and all the rest of it. And I saw different specialists. I saw consultants around the eyes. I saw consultants around the brain. I had 2 MRI scans. And none of those people, and I'm not criticising, I'm really not, because I think things are changing, but none of those people asked me how I was doing. Nobody said, right, let's talk about what your normal day looks like, and let's talk about how you think, how you feel. Everybody, you know, just thought that it was some unexplained physical problem. And, you know, 3 years ago I was diagnosed with ADHD, and I'm on medication for that now, and that's really, I mean, completely changed my life, I have to say. Yeah, I was prescribed all these different medications because they thought I was anxious and depressed, and none of that worked. And because that didn't work, they, you know, looked and focused just on physical health, and nobody bothered to once even think that it might be worthwhile seeing a psychiatrist. Do you know what I mean?
I do, man.
It was, and I think that if we lived in a world where the brain was treated as an organ in the same way as the heart, because it's, I think, is it the most powerful or after the heart, the most powerful organ. I'm not sure. And we looked at how people were feeling, how they were thinking, how they were living their lives, what happened to them when they were younger. If spaces were created so people feel heard, then I think that the world could be a really, really different place. So yeah,
Amazing. Yeah.
Yeah.
I just don't really see a world where that changes, but it so needs to.
Yeah.
And connected to yours, I won't spend much time on this, but my one was schools. Actually,
Yeah.
it was we get it so wrong in the beginning, right? And I think when we look at children, and you've often talked about this, when somebody needs the people in authority to look beyond what they're seeing and seeing what could be possible as causes or symptoms or indications as to why somebody might be behaving in a particular way. It's not that they're just disruptive. So much possibility gets created out of that, having a different approach. So, yeah, thanks for sharing that. So, our main sort of topic of conversation today, I wanted to bring around, so just to say, we're recording on a Friday because normally we would record next week, but next week is Mental Health Awareness Week, and it's part of Mental Health Awareness Month, right? Is that right?
I don't know, man. I know it's definitely Mental Health Awareness Week, and then I think people just broaden it to a month because they can't fit what they want.
Everything in a week, yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's what I think.
And the theme for this year is anxiety.
Yeah.
And I think it's a really important conversation to have for us because I think it's often misunderstood. Ed, just before we sort of jump in, do you sort of mind sharing with our listeners what sort of law you specialise in and your approach to today's conversation?
Okay, well, I'm an employment lawyer, so specialise in all things to do with the Equality Act, also, equal pay, sexual harassment, discrimination, unfair dismissals, contract claims, but anything to do with the employer-employee relationship is something that people would come to me for. I principally act for employers, because they've got deeper pockets. Sometimes you would act for a claimant if they were insured, but otherwise they can't really afford to instruct firms like mine, which is a problem with the system, which we could talk about at a different time perhaps. But yeah, and then in terms of coming at this conversation around anxiety, I guess I've had my own diagnosis of anxiety in the past, and it didn't work for me, this diagnosis of anxiety and this medication that I was given. I was given diazepam for about 15 years actually, because that was the only thing that seemed to help these physical symptoms that I was complaining of. But the way that I'm coming at this conversation really is, I'm not exactly certain what anxiety is. I don't know if it's adrenaline. This morning, for example, I couldn't get the bath to stop running in the hotel. There was all these different knobs, and I'm like an idiot. And I was twisting the wrong knob, and the bath was like filling up really, really quickly. And I thought, this place is going to flood. I'm on the 6th floor. This is typical. It's just going to bloody flood. And I started to panic. And I could feel, there was like a rising panic within me. I could feel it, right?
I'm so avoiding jokes here. You flooding a hotel with the wrong knob in your hand.
And I'm thinking to myself, well, is that anxiety? Well, no, it's not. It's situational, isn't it? I mean, or is anxiety, is it worry? I mean, if you've got nothing to be worried about, yet you're still feeling anxious, is that when the problem, when we've got a problem? Because I worry quite a lot about quite a lot of things, less than I used to. But if we're having a conversation around what do you worry about, then I can talk about how I deal with the things that are on my mind. But if we're talking about the anxiety that I feel, which is, it hits me like a train and I'm not expecting it, and it's all physical. Josh and I talked about this quite a bit. I don't even like using the word anxiety because I think anxiety is thought of as something's happened to you externally and therefore you're anxious. This isn't. I get sometimes literally just hit by a train. I am absolutely exhausted. I don't know why. I start to think about things that from the past and whatever, and there's no rhyme or reason to it. I try and look back. I think, well, have I had a coffee at the wrong time? What have I eaten? Do I need some sugar? Why do I all of a sudden feel in this way? And I get really frustrated about it. I think, everything's going great. Why am I all of a sudden having all these physical feelings of anxiety? Is there something underlying here? What was the question? I can't actually remember.
But I've talked about anxiety in that way, by the way.
Yeah.
Exactly the same.
What makes you anxious, Josh?
I think this is the thing. It relates a little bit to what Ed was just saying. When we talk about anxiety, right, we often think about being worried or concerned or something like that. Anxiety to me is a very, very physical feeling, right? It's a feeling in my body, and actually it's a feeling in my body first before I start to rationalize and attribute something to it. That's normally the case. But I feel most anxious not when I'm got loads of stuff going on. Actually, when there's a bit of a crisis, I feel quite at home, right? I feel like I'm in control. There's things I can do. We're in a crisis. I'm going to sort it out. I feel most anxious when everything's just exactly how it should be. Right, and everything's done, and actually I've got time now. If I wanted, I could kick back and just enjoy the moment. That's for me when the anxiety really starts to kick in.
Yeah.
Because I grew up in an environment in those formative years when my brain was developing systems and all of the things that it needed to. When it was quiet and silent like that, something was about to happen. So my body would get itself prepared, and it would make sense that my body got itself into fight or flight and into that state where I was hyper alert and hyper vigilant. It made perfect sense for me to do that when I was a kid. The problem is that my body and my brain still does that as an adult. So all of the work that I do, or so much of the work that I do on myself, is about trying to be able to settle and calm my body and my nervous system in those moments. And I cannot do that by rationalizing.
Yeah.
I cannot do that by just going,
Calm.
I should be calm here. I should be relaxed. Everything's fine. This is why, listen, loads of people have got some amazing stuff out of doing CBT. That's why it don't work for me, because I fucking did CBT all my life. I looked at situations, tried to look at them from a better angle, and my body still fucking went crazy, which is what my anxiety is. And I think that's one of the big misconceptions of anxiety.
Yeah. And, and the reason I didn't want to dive into it in our intro was you saying I would never have known you to feel anxious is because I've made it my mission for nobody to see my anxiety. From a very early age, I hid it. Probably so much so that I hid it even from myself. And so what happens is, it's not that I'm not feeling anxious, it's just you'll never know about it. So the problem with that sort of energy is if it's not leaving in any particular way, it's just bouncing around my body and it's just making me more and more and more anxious. But the way I sort of deal with it is just, okay, we'll just get on with stuff, right? But I've really started to feel in the last years, as I've understood it myself a bit more than I did in the past, is it manifests in particular ways. So I become less present. I can't really sort of focus on like my relationships at home. If we're about to kind of head out somewhere, even if it's just down for a walk to the beach, I start to get a bit anxious about stuff. So I'm back and forth from the bathroom, and I don't need it. It's just, that's definitely, I haven't drunk like 17 pints of water. It's just that sort of, even if we're just going for a little walk, that's what's going on. Because I'm probably going, what's going to happen? There's probably a bit of, is there danger? I know it's not rational. I know there's no danger, but there's sort of stuff that's going on. And I realized that in the past, I didn't associate what's going on. And I can be more grumpy. I can be like short, snappy, like that sort of stuff. You lot would never see that, not unless it was really hard. It only goes to the ones that I feel I can be like that with.
Yeah,
that I love, and that's fucked up, isn't it?
Yeah, and also it keeps you alone, right?
Yeah,
because you're turning up, showing up, I'm fine, everything's good. You're not even saying that, right? You're just getting on with the day. Bang, bang, bang. We're nailing it, and you're alone. You're completely alone with the way that you feel because you can't communicate it to people.
Yeah,
and I think that's one of the big problems.
Yeah.
When I went to university aged 18, I couldn't wait. Absolutely could not wait to get going. And I was enjoying the party scene, all the rest of it. And I actually became incredibly anxious completely unexpectedly, incredibly anxious. Now, I wouldn't use the word anxious actually, or I wouldn't have done at the time. I would have used the word paranoid, which was excessively worried about something where there was nothing to be worried about. And, you know, I used to think that people were looking at me in a strange way. I used to think that people were out to get me. I didn't trust people. And I remember sharing it with somebody, with two of my really, really close friends at the time. And they both said something similar, which was, don't be so ridiculous. You know, why would anyone want you? And, you know, you're being stupid. Da, da, da. And now they were saying those things from absolutely the best possible place, because they wanted me to realise that I was completely talking nonsense and it was all in my imagination. But what I heard was, don't talk to me about that again because it's so fucking stupid. And therefore I didn't talk to anyone about it for years. In fact, you know, Josh started coaching me when I was 40. And I probably didn't tell you about it until you know, we'd gone some way into our coaching sessions, because I really blocked it out of my mind, because it was almost like shameful that I would feel like that. So, and now I can look back on it and reflect, and I can realise that it was all completely you know, made up and in my imagination. But at the time, it was so real to me. Having said that, I told this story to the psychiatrist who treats me for ADHD. And I said, I went to the doctors because I was so worried. I went to the doctors and the doctor it was a very, very junior doctor, GP, had a camcorder set up in the corner of the room saying, it's my first year, you don't mind that I'm recording everything. And I was like, Jesus Christ, she's one of them. So anyway, I was telling that story to the psychiatrist and he said, well, why did you go to the doctors? He said, why didn't you go to the police? And I said, because I knew at the deepest level, I knew it wasn't right. I knew that I was imagining it all.
It wasn't rational.
But it wasn't rational. So, you know, until he said that to me, I'd never once thought that I was really in danger. Do you know what I mean?
And do you know one thing, right, that's important just to pick up on something that Ed said there? We were talking about this a little bit before we came in, but when you start to describe what we're talking about here is like the human experience, but on a deep level. And when you start to try and attribute words to it, it becomes problematic because it doesn't fully describe your experience. And like, even when you try and talk about it, you still can't fully describe your experience. I get it a lot online, because what I try to do is like go, right, rather than just putting that in a box and saying it's anxiety, let me try and describe what I'm feeling, what I'm experiencing, what I'm seeing, what I think when this is happening, right? And I'll sometimes get people comment and they go, oh, that's anxiety. Or I'll be talking about something else and they go, oh, that's this word. And I go, yeah, but like, I know that it's that word, but that word doesn't cover everything that I'm saying. And sometimes I'll say, you know, somebody can say, you know, oh, I've never experienced anxiety. I mean, I get a bit overwhelmed when this happens. And then they go on to describe and I'd go, well, that's fucking what I would say anxiety is. Do you know what I mean? So words don't cover what we're talking about.
And I think when you talk like that and you share exactly what you're going through, that seems to really resonate with people, because often they'll see the word like anxiety and they'll just gloss over it because it's like, it doesn't fully describe what they're going through. When you start talking about you're in the utility room and you have to like lock yourself away and face the wall or whatever, people like really, they can really resonate with that, because it's like, oh, that's exactly how I feel and I didn't know how to articulate it. But what I want to do is, obviously our personal experiences are really important. And for many of our listeners, they'll be sort of being able to resonate and it will resonate with them. But I'm curious to sort of know what do we think are some of the misconceptions about anxiety? Like, it's been picked as the theme, therefore it's been identified as something that is very prevalent in our society today. So what are some of the misconceptions and or stigmas around kind of anxiety, and why might people withhold what they're feeling within the workplace? So that's quite a big question.
Yeah. I'll go with one misconception that I see, is that anxiety is a problem that needs fixing. As in, we have like pathologized it. So if you feel anxious, you have a problem and we need to stop your anxiety. Whereas actually, like, we need to feel it, right? We feel it for a reason. And sometimes we overfeel it and we feel it too much. And I think in nearly every case, that's because at some level in our life, our nervous system got fucked up Yeah, and so now it overreacts when it don't need to. But it's not like if you are worrying about paying the bills, or you're worrying about your job security or financial security, and you feel anxious, that ain't a problem. That's what you fucking should feel. Like, because if you didn't, you wouldn't do anything about it. And so sometimes that big misconception of pathologizing it and going, some people, you hear them literally, they go, yeah, so I was really worried about losing my job. And then it turned out I had anxiety as well. And it's like, no, why are we separating them? Like you're worried about losing your job and now you've got anxiety. Like, we separate them and pathologize them, and then we lose the context.
Yeah.
And then we go, might lose my job, and now I'm broken and I'm flawed as well.
Yeah.
And separation like that, I think, is a problem. And I still think that the Western kind of model does that too much for a lot of different reasons, by the way.
Conscious of time, I really want to bring Ed in, and just in terms of what you see in terms of your work, but also how, you as a man, as a human being as well.
Well, from a work perspective, I think lots of employers and employees are all anxious. I think that the employers are anxious about not getting things wrong because of the threat of the legal system. They're anxious about keeping the shareholders happy. They're anxious about making enough money to pay the bills and pay the staff. The staff don't feel valued and don't feel part of it, and that creates a disconnect, which creates anxiety. And when you've got disconnect, conflict arises. So I just think the whole thing is a perfect storm, really. And I think that the way in which our culture is set up from an employer and employee perspective. I mean, if you go right back to the history of employment law, it derives from a master-servant relationship. You've got somebody who is subservient to a master telling them what to do, and it really isn't that different now. No matter how many Fridays the boss brings in a fruit bowl, there's still a subservient relationship. And I don't know if you've come across the book by Johann Hari, The Truth About Anxiety and Depression. That's not
Lost
the title.
Connections.
Lost Connections. Yeah. He talks about how the workplace having a meaningful input into the workplace reduces stress and anxiety and depression. And he cites a study in America where there was a bike shop. And the people who worked in the bike shop together, they all left because they hated the environment. The boss was a bit of a bully. He may have been struggling himself. Who knows? But they all left and they set up a cooperative, and they all owned it equally. And even if you decided not to own it and just be a member of staff, you still got to go to every single senior meeting and you got to participate. And apparently, it changed the way in which these individuals. In the way in which they were enjoying their lives, because they didn't feel repressed. And I just think that we put such a huge amount of responsibility on employers to try and fix all of this. Well, it's the system, isn't it, that's broken. And I'm not got a better one. I'm not saying that everyone should be in a cooperative. I look at my firm now. My firm, it's everybody is equal. Everyone owns their own business unit. Everybody's there because they believe in themselves and they want the firm to do well. People don't compete against each other, and it is an amazing environment. Compared to a sort of traditional law practice, which is, you've got all the equity partners at the top who, will compete against each other or look at what each other's doing. And, there might be remarks about people's contributions, that kind of thing, which is, as human beings, they do that, don't they?
That's a really interesting point. And I just want to dig into that, for a few minutes.
And before you do, we can go 10 minutes over, can't we?
A few minutes. Okay, we will.
Good,
all
yeah.
right.
5
okay,
minutes.
all right. The likelihood is that we're still going to have this sort of infrastructure that we're all, familiar with, which is, a triangle with the fewer at the top sort of managing kind of, those beneath them. So setting the demands and driving that. So I'm really curious as to where does the role of employer end, and where does it begin for us as individuals? My point of view is the conversation now is really pushing a lot towards what the employer should be doing. And I equally believe that, in all of the work that I do, that change starts from within first. So so I'm curious as to what you guys think.
Well, the legal answer is in terms of where does it end. If there's an event, for example, that's determined to be what's called an extension of the workplace, then the employer is responsible. So, if there's a drinks event, if I was an employee and this was organised by my employer and you guys sexually harassed me, my employer would be responsible. And that's quite a burden, isn't it, for the employer to carry that amount of responsibility. And you can see why, employers are less inclined now to have the parties and the free drinks and all that because they're on the hook for it.
What if you harass us with a rendition of Angels by Robbie Williams?
It'll be a treat.
I'll be suing.
Yeah.
Is it like, to give you an analogy, right? Because I see this now, yeah. I work with organisations a lot, right? And I work with the leaders, and then I work with the people of businesses, right? And I see it from both sides, yeah. I see it from both sides. I see sometimes, like, employers saying we are providing all of this stuff. Where is it, like, where does it stop being our responsibility? And we have to kind of say, if you're not gonna take everything that we're giving you, then maybe this isn't the right role for you, right? Like, I sort of always try to use this analogy, and you tell me from a legal perspective very quickly if you think this is fair. It's almost like if you're providing the non-alcoholic beer, yeah, if the person who's gone sober turns up at work and drinks the beer and doesn't drink the non-alcoholic beer, then surely that's on them, and that's you've done the right thing. If you're providing donuts at lunchtime, but you also provide fruit, and somebody decides to eat the fucking donut, like, what more can the employee do? Yeah, these are metaphors that I'm giving you. Like, if you're providing the space for a little bit of one-to-one, if you give access to therapy, and you make sure that, like, things are all that, but you've got quite a busy work life because you're up against it, and we're going into a recession potentially and all that sort of stuff. Like, if that person then still has problems, is that where the line is?
Well, the legal answer is that the employer has to make a safe place of work for its employees. So whether it's got a bowl of donuts and a bowl of fruit out, if it's got them both or just one or the other, I'm not sure it would fall foul of the law. I think people do need to take personal responsibility. I think lots of people are always looking for somebody to blame. That, my profession might be to blame for that because, where there's blame, there's a claim. I think that people need to take personal responsibility, but I also think, why are people overeating the donuts? Why are people drinking too much alcohol? There's much, much, much deeper reasons, society reasons.
And often that's wider than the business, right?
Almost always.
That's kind of my point, because I do feel that sometimes, I know we've got to be really quick, I do feel like sometimes, like, what I hear people saying is, my company offers the fruit and the donuts, but my craving for the donuts is so strong, the company should stop offering the donuts and only fruit because I've got an addiction.
Yeah, but that's not
metaphorically.
Right.
We're saying.
Yeah. But that's not right, is it? You can't expect everyone to change the behaviour for you. You just can't.
And
I've changed my own behaviour. I don't drink alcohol anymore. I don't go to the places that I used to go to. I don't go to the work events that I used to go to, and if I do, I duck off early.
Yeah.
Just one final point about employers. I actually think that, a bit like a driving license, right? There's laws of the road. You have to take a test to drive a car and get a driving license. To be an employer, you don't have to take any tests whatsoever, and there's far more, I'm guessing, more laws than there are laws on the road. And you can really ruin people's lives as an employer if you do it wrong. And there are some rogue employers, toxic employers, like there are toxic parents, Josh. But that's not the majority. The majority are employers trying to get it right. And the biggest problem, you talk or you hear a lot about massive employers getting it wrong, whether it be IKEA quite recently and the harassment stuff. But they're not the big problem. The big problem is the small employers that can't afford the HR director or can't really even afford the outsourced HR advice. And they're just literally winging it. And sometimes they'll wing it for years and decades without a problem. And all of a sudden it will unravel with one particular case. And I think that if we showed some more support, I was on a podcast before, the person asked me how much training do HR professionals get in autism. I said, well, none. I said, there's 9 protected characteristics. You can't discriminate on the grounds of age, sex, race, disability, sexual orientation. That's 5. I can't remember the 4 right now. And then, autism is one tiny part of disability. You've got mental disabilities, physical disabilities, and within both of them, you've got hidden disabilities, and it is a hidden disability. So to think that a HR professional would be trained on autism is fantasy, really.
I mean, and that's another topic, that we could dive into that we certainly won't be able to today. But when you're responsible for people in an organisation, there's no real certification process. There's nothing that you need to qualify as. There is something that HR folks do, but it's voluntary. You can go through life as I did in my HR career for quite a while without having it. Whereas if you're an accountant or if you're a lawyer, you have to kind of pass the bar or you have to pass the ACCA. So it's a really interesting thing. We have got so much more to talk about. What we've run out.
We
of time.
definitely need to do a round 2 of this, man.
A round 2.
But definitely with you, Ed. You've been good one to have in the corner. This one, lawyer, employment lawyer.
Yeah. You're going to get yourself into trouble.
I've got a very clever circle.
And
I joke. Ed's me and Ed are very, very good friends, by the way, to say very, very quickly. And it's like powerful to watch the change and all that, and grateful to know you and be part of it as well. So.
Yeah, well, thank you. Listen, it's been great. Really, really enjoyed it, and I'd love to come down again.
Brilliant. Well, the mic's yours now for Angels. So
yeah, play us out with it.
I sit and wait.
Ed, thank you so much.
Oh, he's cut me off
Ed,
already.
thanks so much for coming
cringing.
in.
Yeah. Can I just do the cringe question again from the beginning very quickly?